Senhoras e senhores, um bom dia. A Universidade Federal de Rondônia, UNIR, em parceria com a Associação de Literatura e ECOCRÍTICA, promovem a abertura oficial do 5º Congresso Internacional de Literatura e Ecocrítica. Este evento acontece na modalidade à distância em saúde pública. A UNIR, preocupada com o bem-estar da comunidade acadêmica e comunidade em geral, que assistem a este evento, adota a audiodescrição de todos os membros que participarão efetivamente dessa solenidade. Este evento conta com recursos tecnológicos que garantem um alcance ampliado das informações aqui apresentadas, assim como promove a acessibilidade audiovisual e disponibiliza tradutores de Libras. Começaremos com a minha audiodescrição. Me chamo Eduardo Moreira, tenho um tom de pele parda, 1,75 m de altura, cabelos curtos e pretos, estou vestindo um terno de cor azul, camisa branca, gravata roxa. Sou cadeirante, estou posicionado em frente a um backdrop com a logomarca da UNIR, os brasões replicados e a bandeira da UNIR, juntamente com a bandeira do Brasil e de Rondônia. Agora iremos descrever os tradutores de Libras que atuarão nesse dia e se revezarão a cada 20 minutos. Está conosco Everson Duarte, cor de pele parda, possui bem volumosa, está vestindo uma camisa
Eduardo, seu microfone está desligado, Eduardo. Por favor.
Opa,
Nós não
desculpa.
estamos te ouvindo.
Eu tinha aberto por algum motivo, deve ter fechado novamente. Onde eu parei? Na minha audiodescrição? Eu já cheguei a me audiodescrever? Ah, sim. Ok. Nós também está conosco, fazendo a tradução de Libras, a Nilce Jesus de Souza, cor da pele parda, possui 1,65 m de altura, cabelos cacheados. Está vestindo uma camisa preta, posicionada em frente a uma parede de cor verde. Pedimos que a todos os participantes deste evento que mantenham seus microfones desligados e só liguem no momento de suas falas. Senhoras e senhores, para compor o dispositivo de honra, temos a satisfação de apresentar a reitora da Universidade Federal de Rondônia, professora Marcele Regina Nogueira Pereira.
Olá, bom dia a todas e todos. Sejam bem-vindos.
A presidente da Associação de Literatura e Ecocrítica, Aslas Brasil, da Universidade Federal da Paraíba, professora Zélia Monteiro Bora.
Bom dia a todos. É um prazer estar com todos vocês.
O integrante do grupo de pesquisa Deve Amazônia, Literatura, Educação e Interculturalidade UNIR, professor Hélio Rodrigues da Rocha.
Bom dia a todos, é um prazer imenso estar convosco.
Agora, em respeito aos falecidos por causa da Covid-19, façamos 1 minuto de silêncio. Obrigado. Dando continuidade, o 5º Congresso Internacional de Literatura e Ecocrítica, organizado pelo Grupo de Pesquisa Devir Amazônia, da UNI, a Associação de Literatura e Ecocrítica ASLE Brasil, discutirá propostas críticas, interdisciplinares, capazes de estabelecer diálogos baseados desde o pensamento da escola de Frankfurt aos estudos animais contemporâneos, que poderão nos levar a considerar a defesa teórica de animais não humanos. O Congresso tem como objetivo propor discussões sobre a brutalização que vitimiza os não humanos, evidenciando esforços coletivos para o desenvolvimento de uma sociedade mais racional e justa no que se refere principalmente à integridade dos seres não humanos, fomentando assim a ampliação da reflexão no que diz respeito à defesa do exercício da compaixão pelos animais. Desta forma, o 5º Congresso Internacional de Literatura e Ecocrítica busca ampliar os diversos temas que dialogam diretamente com o momento histórico vivenciado, relacionado à situação pandêmica da Covid-19, considerando a opressão sofrida pelos humanos e pelos não humanos. Nesse momento, convidamos o professor Hélio Rodrigues da Rocha para seu pronunciamento. Neste momento, ele se audiodescreve.
Bom dia a todos. Meu nome é Hélio Rodrigues Rocha. Eu tenho a cor da pele escura. Eu tenho 1,62 m de altura. Tenho cabelo preto, bem curto. E eu estou vestindo uma camisa gola polo na cor preta, né? E estou posicionado à frente de uma parede de tijolos com um portal ao lado. Gostaria de agradecer imensamente a todos. É uma honra estar aqui para falar do nosso Devir Amazônia. Gostaria, primeiramente, de agradecer à Universidade Federal de Rondônia, à Procea, à Ascom, a todos os cerimonialistas, aos tradutores e intérpretes de Libras. O grupo Devir Amazônia, ele está preocupado, está atento com pesquisas, né, voltadas para as questões que envolvam questões animais, meio ambiente, cosmologias indígenas, direitos animais, etc. Então, este evento é uma parceria, né, com a Universidade Federal da Paraíba, juntamente com a ASLE, representada tendo como presidente a professora Zélia Bora, e aqui no nosso grupo de pesquisa, a professora Heloísa Helena, e eu como um integrante desse grupo de estudos. É isso, muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado, professor. Convidamos a professora Zélia Monteira Bora para seu pronunciamento. Neste momento, ela se audiodescreve. Pode abrir seu microfone, professora, por favor.
Desculpe. Bom dia a todos, sou Zélia Bora, tenho a cor da pele brown, tenho 1,58 m, cabelos curtos, estou vestindo uma blusa branca com umas estampas, com uns gatinhos, bem apropriada à nossa apresentação, e encontro-me posicionada para uma parede que tem uma pérgola com as plantas, e do lado direito, do lado esquerdo, do lado direito uma escada. O 5º Congresso Internacional de Literatura e Ecocrítica e a 3ª Conferência Bienal da ASLE Brasil são conferências das mais bem-sucedidas que organizamos. Elas foram organizadas sob profunda comoção diante da tragédia pandêmica que se alastrou sobre o nosso país desde fevereiro de 2020. Não obstante as dificuldades com a saúde e a educação, sobretudo pelo colapso do ensino presencial, este evento que agora se inicia não ocorreria se não fossem os esforços sobre-humanos do grupo de pesquisa da UNIR, Devi Amazônia, da nossa querida reitora Marcela Pereira. Eu agradeço a presença dela e a representação desse trabalho da UNIR, a todos que colaboraram da equipe técnica para que esse evento fosse possível, e, finalmente, aos esforços especiais, o trabalho especial dos conselheiros da ASLE Brasil, especialmente os professores Márcio Cantarim, Heloísa Helena, Robson Teles, Evelyn Libanori, Fabiano Gumier, Hélio Rocha e Felipe Vandelve. Destaco também o incansável apoio e trabalho relacionado aos assuntos da instituição de Ivana Peixoto, Eric Christian, Siddharth Bora e Antônio Felipe. São extensivos também os meus profundos agradecimentos aos palestrantes convidados, como Scott Slovic, Animesh Roy, François Besson, Rex Nielsen, Roberto Fornes-Brog. Agradecemos imensamente ao educador Almir Suruí, ao professor Daniel Bellic, especialmente a generosidade de todos vocês, de vocês dois, né, em atender o nosso pedido, e a mediação, óbvia, do professor Daniel Bellic. Como assinalamos pelo título de nossa conferência, Poéticas do Cotidiano, os Animais e o Meio Ambiente, nossa perspectiva reverbera principalmente a nossa preocupação moral com os seres sencientes que historicamente são coisificados, esquecidos, comidos, maltratados, traficados, violentados sexualmente, trucidados, enquanto suas mortes e sofrimento são reduzidos ao mínimo de valor ou importância quando comparada à humana. Tomando como ponto de partida essa verdade inconteste, sob a visão globalmente majoritária e antropocêntrica da sociedade, pretendemos nesse encontro lançar não apenas reflexões de cunho acadêmico, mas adentrarmos no âmbito da ação, como prenuncia o encerramento dessa conferência. Nesses breves momentos que me foram concedidos, gostaria de dizer que não há momento mais propício para revermos a nossa relação com os seres sencientes. Nessa pandemia, enquanto quase que diariamente tomei conhecimento de amigos e amigos de amigos que partiram, me dei conta que os sencientes passaram a sofrer ainda mais abandono e mortes. Bastei olhar as cidades sob lockdown e relatos de animais que foram soltos na rua por ocasião da morte dos seus tutores. Acentuou-se em mim ainda mais o sentido de fragilidade nesses últimos meses. E como todas as nossas vidas estão ligadas às vidas dos sencientes, levamos em consideração essa perspectiva. No livro tibetano do Viver e Morrer, de Sonjai Rinpoche, ele relembra essa ligação entre todos os seres viventes. Ele nos relembra que essa convicção sincera é capaz de desenvolver uma profunda, clara e ilimitada compaixão por todos os seres. Eu entendo que é tempo de evocarmos a compaixão, pois só ela é capaz de nos unir ao sofrimento uns dos outros e aos sofrimentos dos sencientes. Pois a compaixão, como diz o mestre, não é somente uma sensação de simpatia ou cuidado com quem sofre. Não é apenas ternura que vem do coração para a pessoa que está à sua frente, ou um reconhecimento muito nítido de suas necessidades e da sua dor. É também uma determinação prática e contínua em fazer tudo o que for possível e necessário para aliviar os sofrimentos alheios. A compaixão só é verdadeira quando é ativa. Desse modo, esperamos que possamos aprender a termos a compaixão pelos sencientes e mutuamente entre nós. À luz dessas reflexões, agradecemos aos outros colegas que compartilham os conhecimentos conosco e declaramos aberto os trabalhos da ASLE Brasil. Obrigada. Paz a todos.
Convidamos a professora Marcele Regina Nogueira para seu pronunciamento. Neste momento, ela se audiodescreve.
Olá, bom dia mais uma vez a todas, a todos, a todes, para aqueles que não se reconhecem no binômio de gênero. Quero saudar aos que nos assistem aqui do Brasil, das nossas imensas regiões, dos nossos estados. Quero também agradecer e saudar aqueles que nos assistem fora do Brasil, né, os nossos companheiros aí já descritos pela professora Zélia. Sejam todos muitíssimo bem-vindos à nossa universidade, bem-vindos a esse encontro. Nós desejamos a todos uma excelente oportunidade de crescimentos e de trocas. Por isso eu quero agradecer o convite da professora Heloísa Helena, né, aqui representada também pelo professor Hélio Rodrigues, que representam o grupo de pesquisa Devir Amazônia, que há muito tempo nos honra e nos orgulha com inúmeras atividades, inúmeros encontros que beneficiam o nosso trabalho, fortalecem a nossa instituição. Então, muito obrigada, parabéns mais uma vez para todos os integrantes do grupo de pesquisa Devir Amazônia, Literatura, Educação e Interculturalidade da UNIR. Muito obrigada. Agradeço também a presença e as palavras da professora Zélia, aqui presidente da Associação de Literatura e Ecocrítica, né, da Universidade Federal da Paraíba. Seja muito bem-vinda, professora Zélia. Agradecemos imensamente a sua participação, a participação dos membros da ASLE, que só fortalece ainda mais a nossa atividade. E quero agradecer e saudar em especial ao nosso queridíssimo Almir Suruí, nosso doutor honoris causa da Universidade Federal de Rondônia, com o título de Muzi. Então, é muitíssimo importante a sua presença aqui, saudamos, agradecemos e valorizamos a sua presença em tempos de defesa da nossa meio ambiente, da nossa Amazônia, como um legítimo representante das lideranças indígenas. Nós gostaríamos muitíssimo de saudá-lo e de agradecer mais uma vez a sua presença nesta data, nesta solenidade, fazendo a palestra de abertura desse encontro. É muito importante também saudar ao Eberson Duarte e a Nilceia Jesus, que são os tradutores e intérpretes que aqui estão também presentes e que nos ajudam a condição de acessibilidade desse encontro tão importante às nossas instituições. Agradeço, por último, a toda a equipe do cerimonial, ao Eduardo, à Priscila, ao Anael das Com, que estão aqui por trás, fazendo com que esse encontro aconteça. Muito obrigada pelo trabalho, pelo carinho, pelo comprometimento de todos vocês. Bem, eu desejo que tenhamos um encontro excelente. A nossa Universidade Federal de Rondônia, sempre que necessário, estará junto, fortalecendo, ampliando os espaços de discussão. Esse é um tema provocador, instigante, necessário. Temos que cada vez mais reconhecer a importância dos seres viventes sobre essa terra na missão de garantir, de alguma forma, que tenhamos condições de viver melhor, em sintonia, em benefício de uma vida mais digna, de uma vida útil, que possa fortalecer também as nossas imensas dificuldades. Então, eu desejo que tenhamos uma manhã rica, uma tarde melhor ainda aqui no Brasil, e que possamos ter encontros como esse com frequência, porque a nossa universidade precisa, a nossa Amazônia merece, e nós estamos à disposição dos senhores e das senhoras para que momentos como esse possam acontecer com frequência. Muito obrigada, bom dia e bons trabalhos para todos nós.
Muito obrigado. A programação...
Desculpa, eu não me autodescrevi, Eduardo, olha só. Desculpa a quebra do protocolo aqui cerimonial, mas eu sou uma mulher negra, tenho 42 anos, tenho cabelos crespos abaixo dos ombros, visto uma blusa estampada, atrás um quadro com a imagem de uma menina quilombola, aqui também uma liderança, uma criança indígena e os símbolos nacionais. Então, estou no gabinete da reitoria nesse momento. Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigado. Dando continuidade, a programação seguirá com a conferência de abertura ministrada pelo líder indígena e ativista ambiental Almir Suruí, com o tema Usando Tecnologia para Salvar a Floresta. Lembramos a todos que as atividades do 5º Congresso Internacional de Literatura e Ecocrítica terão continuidade até o dia 11 de agosto. Durante esses dias, serão realizadas palestras, apresentações, orais de trabalho, lançamento de livros e simpósios. Antes de ouvirmos a conferência de abertura ministrada pelo conferencista Almir Suruí, que terá como moderador o professor Daniel Bellick, no qual dará continuidade ao evento, agradecemos a participação dos membros do dispositivo de honra. Agradecemos o apoio dos tradutores de Libras e a assessoria de cerimonial e protocolo, pelo apoio. Agradecemos a assessoria de comunicação na divulgação e transmissão do evento. Neste momento, desfaz o dispositivo de honra do 5º Congresso Internacional de Literatura e Ecocrítica da Universidade Federal de Rondônia, com o convite para acompanhar as transmissões do evento pelo canal do YouTube. Passamos para o professor Daniel Bellic, a continuidade do Congresso. Muito obrigado.
a ASLI e a UNIR por essa conferência. E agora eu vou apresentar o líder Almir Suruí. Almir Suruí é Labiwaye Saga, do povo Paiter Suruí, doutor honoris causa pela Universidade Federal de Rondônia em 2011, por seu conhecimento e luta em defesa dos direitos indígenas e do meio ambiente. Ele é coordenador geral da Associação Metairelá, do povo indígena Suruí, e coordenador da Regional Rondônia, no grupo de trabalho amazônico da Regional de Rondônia. O líder Almir Suruí dará a conferência intitulada Usando Tecnologia para Salvar a Floresta. Então, com vocês, Almir Suruí.
Então, bom dia, né? Mais uma vez, quero agradecer pelo convite. Para mim sempre foi e será uma alegria das nossas experiências para o bem comum. Então, espero que esse espaço seja visto dessa forma. E o povo Paiter Suruí tem 53 anos de contato com o não indígena, né? E nós estamos aqui no estado de Rondônia, município de Cacau, e onde o arco de desmatamento, né, muito grande, e dessa forma o território 7 de setembro do povo Paité Suruí tem recebido muita pressão, né, pressão de vários tipos, desmatamento.
Parece que a conexão dele caiu.
Acho que a conexão do líder Almir Suruí caiu. Vamos aguardar um pouco.
Professor Daniel, não estou te escutando.
Dá uma olhadinha no seu mic, professor. Vou colocar na tela de espera aqui novamente. Testa seu mic aí. Não está dando para escutar, professor.
Pedimos desculpas a todos pelo inconveniente. A liderança Almir Suruí está fora da cidade, na aldeia, com conexão instável à internet. Então, vamos solicitar a ele que grave a conferência de abertura que fez hoje, para que não perdamos nada do que ele disse, e quem tiver interesse pode ouvir a gravação que vai ser postada no canal do YouTube, esse mesmo que vocês estão assistindo, ok? Obrigado, desculpe, obrigado, Almir, e desculpe a todos.
do Brasil estão fazendo para que tudo isso aconteça. Bom, nós temos aqui hoje, agora temos a grata satisfação de apresentar o professor Animesh Roy, que é o nosso editor convidado da nossa revista Healy. Ele é professor assistente do Departamento de Inglês do St. Xavier's College, na Ranch University, e essa universidade fica na parte oriental do estado de Calcutá, certo? E sua área de pesquisa inclui estudos humanísticos do meio ambiente, estudos pós-coloniais, medicina humanística, estudos indígenas e comunicação. Suas recentes publicações incluem Provincializing Ecocriticism, Post-Colonial Thought and Environmental, Historical Difference, que são livros da Roman and Littlefield, e as próximas publicações serão Wild Folklores, Bombibir, Johuramanama, Ecological, Unconscious and Postcoloniality, a ser publicado pela Bloomsbury em 2021, na Índia. Nós temos o prazer, então, de trazer o professor Roy. Welcome, professor. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Zelia, for such a wonderful introduction, for introducing me to all the people here. And thank you, Asli Brazil, for giving me this platform for expressing my ideas, my views on a topic that I'm going to speak on. The topic that I'm going to discuss, has been titled as Animalia Indica, the eco-philosophical roots of animal ethics in Indic traditions. Let me share the slides. Is it visible now?
Yes, teacher.
Okay, great. So, okay, now it's full screen. So, Animalia Indica, the eco-philosophical roots of animal ethics in Indic traditions. Now, the first thing that I'm going to focus or to begin my discussion about is the human-animal relations in contemporary India. Now, India is one of those places at present where human-animal conflicts are at its peak. If you just have a look at any of the countries of these global south, particularly the Southern Asia, you will find human-animal conflict. Now, this is despite the fact very inclusive relationship with non-human world, particularly the animals. The root of such human-animal conflicts in contemporary India goes back to a period of resource conflicts arising out of a loot of natural resources, what I might call, during the colonial period. Okay. Now, here I am sharing with you a picture. This picture is particularly taken from Sundarbans, the southern part of West Bengal. Now, you will find a kind of syncretic culture in the Sundarbans that celebrates and worships both the man as well as the animal. If you look carefully, you'll find, now Sundarban is an area where on the land there is the tiger and in the water there is a crocodile, and the humans in between have to struggle hard for sustenance. So you see the people there, both the Hindus as well as the Muslims, have devised a culture or religio-cultural values that is very unique to that part of the country. They celebrate not only human figures, but also animal figures. Now you will see that here are Hindu goddesses, these are Hindu goddesses. And here is a figure that is Muslim. So a strange syncretism of values has taken place. And you will find here the figure of a tiger. There is a deer and crocodile at the bottom. Sundarban is one of those geopolitical areas of India that explains the interaction at the cultural level, at the social level, as well as at the religious level between humans and the animals. Now, what happened during the colonial period is that the colonial British not only wiped out most of India's age-old forests cover, but it also literally wiped out most of its diverse animals, including the cheetah, and throwing many more animals on the verge of extinction. In the 18th century, the British officials offered special rewards to kill animals in India so that forests could be razed to the ground and agricultural land extended in order to increase tax revenues. So in order to do that, since people in India shared a very close relationship with animals, in order to do this, new images of animals were constructed by the British. The tiger, for example, or the natural shyness of the tiger was reconstructed as tiger being very cunning and savage. It was described as having a predilection for human flesh, making it a man-eater and a savage enemy who needed to be killed. So that image of tiger was reconstructed in order to ensure that it gets killed. Because unless the animals which the British were very scared of are not killed, they are not in a position to raise the forest there. So the entire image of the tiger was reconstructed, not just the tiger, but also the other animals too. If the tiger, its natural shyness was reconstructed as being cunning and savage, the bison and cheetah was regarded as vermin. Now, though there has been some sporadic attempts to conserve animals, it was literally a byproduct of the destruction of the forest and animals that took place during the British period. It was too little and too few. Moreover, the British destroyed traditional methods of Indian forest management and animal protection. Before the British came, forests and its animals were preserved by the local people. The local people considered animals as part of their own, and in fact an extension of their own. Humans and animals are not different things, but different parts of the same whole. Now, what the British did is that they brought all the forests under a central colonial control, and they criminalized the entry of locals into forests, the locals whose life has been totally dependent on the forest, who coexisted with the non-human world. They controlled it and criminalized the entry of the locals into forests, and individual protection of animals was also criminalized. It's very interesting to know that almost 1/3 of the Indian landmass is under the control of the Indian Forest Department since the British period. And in most of the areas, locals are not allowed to enter. Now, what it did is that it created a resource crisis and a rift in the human-animal relationship that was shared for long. Now, a classic case of such a conflict, of the human-animal conflict, is Amitav Ghosh's novel, The Hungry Tide. In the novel, Ghosh argues how the human-animal symbiotic relationship that was shared for so long was literally broken down as a result of the introduction of a Western binary philosophy of forest management, animal management, the zoological management, placing humans and tigers in conflict with each other. Now, when the British brought all the forest covers of India under their control, the Botanical Society was instituted, the Zoological Society was instituted. So not only the plants, but also the entire animal diversity of India was brought under colonial control, despite the fact that the British were literally clueless about the extent, about the range, and the diversity of the animal and the botanical covers of India. Not only that, they were also literally clueless about the kind of coexistence, the human-animal coexistence, the human-non-human coexistence that was there for centuries in India. Now, what such a reorganization did is that it redrew the lines of relatedness between the locals and the tigers. So much so that humans and animals are literally pitted against each other. Okay. While earlier the locals considered tigers as brethren, as a part of their human society, now they began to see the tigers as enemies, because tigers are no longer the neighbors with whom the forest had to be shared, but state property. And backed by the ruling elite, they had begun to treat the islanders as tigers' food. Thus, every time the islanders are angry and feel betrayed by the state, by the government, they destroy state property. The tiger being the most important symbol of it in the region. So this is a picture to show how a conflict is going on. This is a tiger, a leopard, and the forest officials are trying to, get control of the leopard, catch the leopard who has entered into the human habitation. Okay, now these things are pretty common in India, especially where forests and human habitation, coexist. Now, many sanctuaries, national parks, and protected areas were created in post-independence period. The Wildlife Protection Act came in 1972. The Project Tiger, a government project, a project launched by the Indian government to protect the tiger, was launched in 1973. Similarly, Gir Lion Sanctuary was instituted in 1972. Gir Lion Sanctuary means Gir in the state of Gujarat is the only place where Asiatic lions are found. That is the last habitat of the Asiatic lion. So in order to protect the Asiatic lions, the Gir Lion Sanctuary was instituted in 1992, followed by the Project Elephant in 1992 again. But the number of animals that since then have decreased substantially. The reason behind such a depletion of zoological diversity of life forms in India is the erosion of the eco-philosophical values of equality across trans-Pacific boundary, values that are quintessential or values that have been quintessential to Indian culture and tradition for long. Okay, so this was the current. This is the current scenario in India right now, and we would try to understand what went really wrong, or where the conflict, the root of the conflict. In order to understand the root of the conflict, we have to understand the eco-philosophical roots of animal ethics in Indian tradition. Behind the values of coexistence and fellow feeling towards animals in Indian culture, something that has been degraded, something that has been lost substantially during the colonial period, we have to address again in order to understand and if to find any way out of this conflict. Now, what is this eco-philosophical root of the Indian ethics in Indian tradition? Now, to understand how humans in India treat animals and the larger non-human world, one has to get into the eco-philosophical roots of the value system that guides them. Now, the ancient religions of India, or rather the ancient culture of India, the culture of India is intimately connected to its religion. And religion not in a very codified form, but also the everyday practice of religion. The ancient religions of India, particularly Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism, have never differentiated between the soul of a human being and the soul of an animal. For them, it's both are the same. There is no distinction between the humans and the non-human, or the humans and the animals. A fundamental concept of this Indian culture are the concepts of Atma, Jivatma, and the Paramatma. Now, what is Atma? It's very difficult to have English translations of this term. But Atma means one's true self. It is the fundamental entity of anything or any being, and it is eternal. So Atma is something that is eternal, unchangeable, and unmodified. Simplest form means the soul. Now, Jivatma is Prakriti, which in English translates roughly with Atma. Atma, which is attributeless, which is qualityless, and is known as Jivatma. Another is the Jivatma. Atma is of the higher order. Jivatma is of towards something that is not as eternal, as fundamental as that of the Atma. Now, Paramatma means supreme soul. If the self of the body is the soul, then Paramatma is the self of the soul. All things, both animate and inanimate in this world, has its Atma, and all are connected to the Paramatma. That is, everything in this world, everything in this universe, according to Indian tradition, has a soul of their own. And everything is equal. Everybody is equal. There is no hierarchy. There is no better, no worse. Animate or inanimate are the same. Be it human or the non-human are the same. And Atma ultimately links with the Paramatma, that is the supreme soul. Now, in Indian philosophical thought, all forms of life are subject to the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Now, Indian
Professora Zara?
Yes, am I back?
Okay, I'm
Hi,
here.
teacher. Hi.
Okay. Somehow I lost it, I suppose. Okay. Am I audible, Luna?
Yeah, we can.
Yes, we can
Okay.
listen you.
Okay. 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 Great. Let me share the screen again. Okay, fine. Is it visible now?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay.
I don't know if you wanna just to make a very. We could do some brief summary in what you have been discussing, because some people are interested, but they don't have the translation. But go
Okay.
ahead. But please go ahead.
Okay, Cecilia. Okay. So naturally, there is a concept. So that's a person, an animal, and an insect are equally part of the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Finally, when good karmas lead to self-realization, the soul is liberated from the cycle of samsara. This is moksha or nirvana, the ultimate liberation of the individual soul, leading it to oneness with the Supreme Being or Brahman. Everything has been created by the Supreme Being, that is the Paramatma. It comes from the Supreme Being and returns back to the Supreme Being. Now, animals are sacred in Indian tradition or Indic culture because people identify with them. An identity that is born of the belief in karma and the transmigration of souls. Animals in Indian traditions are considered to have the same feeling and passion as that of the humans. The soul of the animal is connected to the Paramatma or the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul in the same way as the soul of the human, and there is no difference between the two. So this is a fundamental concept the concept of the Atma as well as the Paramatma. Every living or non-living organism has its own soul, that is the Atma, and which is connected to the larger or the greater soul, that is the Paramatma. And since all the souls are of equal, so there is no distinction in Indian culture regarding human and animal. Now, another important principle of Indian tradition is the principle of ahimsa, on non-violence. Now, this principle of non-violence guide human-animal relationship in Indian tradition. Non-violence in both thought and deed, both in thought as well as in action. Now, although Aryans were not vegetarians, the concept of non-killing, even for food, appears in early literature. The Rig Veda, one of the earliest of the Vedas, the sacred book of the Indians or Hindus, condemns all forms of animal killings, even for food. The Yajurveda, another Veda, speaks of service to animals leading to heaven. The Yajurveda speaks that no person should kill animals helpful to all, and persons serving them should obtain heaven. The Atharvaveda, another Veda, one of the 4 Vedas, describes that the earth was created for the enjoyment of not only human beings, but also for the bipeds and the quadrupeds and all the other creatures, non-human creatures as well. So it's very interesting to see how the animal ethics that is practiced in India derives a lot from religious traditions. Religious traditions doesn't mean only the codified religions. It means values and ethics that are practiced in everyday life. And it is because of the multiplicity, heterogeneity, and the plurality of the Indian traditions that we'll find that different religions or ancient Indian religions, be it Hinduism, be it Jainism, be it Buddhism, the values and ethics of toward animals or non-humans overlap with each other. There is no often fixed boundary between this religion and the other. Mundaka Upanishad describes all forms of life has emerged from the Supreme Being and how it is essential to respect and protect all. As it describes that from him too gods are produced, mayfold, the celestial men, cattle, birds. Much later, another book, Manusmriti, it's not a religious text, but rather a cultural text, or a Hindu cultural text, or an Indian cultural text for that matter of fact. Manusmriti argues how he who injures innocent beings with a desire to give himself pleasure never finds happiness, neither in life nor in death. Srimad Bhagavatam, that is the Gita, says how a cruel person killing animal life forms cannot be happy either in life or in death. Yajnavalkya Smriti says that the wicked person who kills animals which are protected has to live in hellfires, for the day is equal to the number of hairs on the body of that animal. So there are plenty of texts, both religious as well as the cultural. All these religious and cultural texts basically serve as the foundation of animal ethics in India. The traditional animal ethics I am referring to, something that got eroded during the colonial period, because the British came with their own ways of thinking, that was not in consonance with Indian way of thinking. Now, in the 6th century BC, 2 religious preachers were born. One is the Mahavira, which is believed to be one of the very famous saint of Jainism, and another is the Buddha, who took the Upanishadic philosophy and took all the philosophies of the Upanishads to the common man in a very common language. Buddha established Buddhism. Now, Mahavira or Jainism is basically an ethico-metaphysical system. Compared to Hinduism and Buddhism, the concept of ahimsa is a very prime vow or discipline that needs to be understood and practiced both by common man and the ascetic, and is equivalent to the realization of the Supreme Being. You will find that the values or the ethics in Jainism and Buddhism overlaps with Hinduism and vice versa. Now, ahimsa paramo dharma means ahimsa or non-violence is the highest religion, and it is a basic tenet in Hinduism as well as in Jainism. Ahimsa, as viewed by Jainism, is not merely the causation of violence, it is the severance of any of the vitality in a mobile or immobile being. So, keeping anything in confinement without consideration for its freedom to exist or live, or captivity, is almost a sin in Jainism. It's very important when you consider animal ethics in India. Now, these belief systems inform the everyday attitudes of Indians towards animals. So, rearing animals without adequate shelter, air, light, space, and food is regarded as atichar or bad conduct. Similarly, keeping animals, including dairy animals, tied with a rope throughout the day is also violence. Now, look the way they are trying to create a kind of value and ethics and judgment toward the non-humans, particularly animals and other creatures. A simple prayer of the Jainas is, let the law of the Jainas give all happiness to all humans, animals, and other creatures of the world. All beings desire to live, and they like pleasure, hate, pain, shun destruction, like to live long. To all, life is dear. Now, so strict is the need to respect animals and other non-human life in Jainism that Jain monks and nuns cover their mouth to prevent insects or any other micro life get into their mouth. They sweep the ground as they walk on it to avoid stepping on even the most tiniest of creatures. So Jainism has taken the values towards animals to a much higher level, that they are very rigid in conforming to these rules compared to that of Hinduism. In Buddhism, the Buddhists are to follow the Eightfold Paths taught by Buddha, emphasize the importance of abstaining from activities that bring harm to animals and other living beings, and their non-killing. Almost the same philosophy that is being preached with a basic difference. The Bodhisattva is one who is full of maitri, that is friendship, toward animals particularly. For he aspires to achieve Buddhahood. Now, Buddha said that as a mother would be very good towards her only child, her well-beloved sons, so too you should be very good towards all creatures. And all creatures means not only the humans, but also the non-humans. Animals, birds, insects, microorganisms, and to everyone in this world. Buddha himself took refuge from his bickering disciples by living among the animals who served him devotedly. Now, the Jataka tales hold up the noble qualities of various animals as examples to emulate. The tales of the Buddha, that is the Jataka tales. The tales are full of animal characters with a moral. And all these tales, almost called a fable, teach you something regarding humans and particularly about animals, birds, and insects. That is the non-human world. 3 animals represent the 3 stages in the life of the Buddha. The elephant represents his birth, when his mother dreamt of an elephant entering his womb. The horse represents his renunciation of his kingdom, an embrace of monasticism, and the deer represents his first sermon, which took place in the deer park at Sarnath, now in Bihar. So see how in Buddhism also, the idea of the animal, the concept of the animal, our perceptions, our values, our ethics of animals are so intricately intertwined in our everyday social and cultural experiences, and which in turn goes on to inform how we treat animals, how we think of animal ethics, and how we feel about animals. In sharp contrast to animals being thought of as something very distinctive, very distinctive compared to humans, which the Western Enlightenment has done to a large extent. The Indian tradition thinks of the animals or the non-human world as very intricately connected to the humans. And the two are not different, but the same thing, belonging to the common ancestral stock. Now, if there is anyone, any person who is credited for the mass propagation of the principle of ahimsa, it is the Mauryan king Ashoka, 304 to 233, 232 BC. Now, Ashoka's edicts on rocks and freestanding pillars stand testimony to his adoption of ahimsa as his state policy, to his preaching of non-killing of animals as essential dharma. So Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism codified the rules in everyday cultural experience to be emulated in everyday social and cultural experiences. Now Ashoka as a ruler, Ashoka as a king, took the principle of ahimsa in everyday practice. He just engraved the principles of ahimsa on stone pillars. These stone pillars were engraved at different places around his kingdom. Now, another religious cultural experience is that of the Shaivism. The Shaivite saint of Nayanmar in Tamil Nadu speak of equal treatment of animals and against practice of animal sacrifice. Respect for animal life became very symbolic as a often very evolved person. So Shaivism speaks of the same thing, the animal ethics. Now a sign of upward mobility in Shaivism was a changeover from the animal sacrifice and meat eating to a more vegetarian lifestyle, both in religion as well as in practice, not only just theoretical, but also practical. If there is Shaivism in the south, there is the Vaishnavism in the north of India that speaks of animal ethics. Now, Vaishnavism, particularly the Krishna cult, that preached a religion of love for all creations and a special role for cows that gave milk and were therefore mother substitutes. The main reason that cows are worshipped in India is because they offer milk, which is the chief food for sustenance, and they often serve as a substitute for the as a mother substitute. Now Vishnu, the sustainer of the world in Hindu religion, incarnated himself several times, 4 of which were as fish, tortoise, boar, and half man, half animal. Thus, divinity was equally in man as well as in animal. And such a thinking gave a boost to the equal treatment of animals and the conservation of several species. If you go to Rajasthan of India, the northwestern part of Rajasthan, the desert part, it's very interesting to find that Guru Jambeshwari Ji Maharaj established a religio-cultural value system, or what is called the Vishnoi religion. Vishnoi religion means, Vish means 20 and Noi means 9. So he established a 29 principles that are very essential to conserve animals that are very endemic to that part of the world. And that is essential to preserve biodiversity and encourage equality of treatment of animals. Jamboji weaved these 29 principles with religion so that they are followed minutely. He said that he would be reborn in every black buck, a deer that is found in that part of the world. It is these principles of transspecies thinking that have ensured that the desert in Rajasthan is one of the most greenest of the deserts in the world, as far as the life forms are concerned. Now, a very interesting thing in Hinduism is the avatar, the concept of the avatar, or the incarnation of Vishnu. Avatar means one who descends. Now, Vishnu's incarnations perform all three roles of creation, preservation, and destruction. Why destruction? Because he destroys evil and re-establishes dharma. Dharma means something that you have to follow, or you should follow. What is our responsibility? Vishnu incarnates as several species, taking progressively developing forms. The first four forms, as in order, are the fish, which in Sanskrit translates into Matsya, who lives in water. Then is the Kurma, or the amphibious tortoise, who lives in both in the sea as well as in land. Then is the Baraha, the boar, the four-legged mammal, and the Narasimha, the half-man, half-lion. The rest are the Vamana, the dwarf, the Parashuram, the wild man, Rama, the perfect man, Krishna, the political philosopher, Buddha, the man of peace, and Kalki, the destroyer of the world. So here is a picture to explain a bit. If you look at the topmost picture on the left, you will find the Matsya, that is the fish, Vishnu's incarnation as a fish. Then comes as Vishnu as amphibians. Then comes as a mammal, or the Varaha, the boar. Then comes the Narasimha, who is half man, half animal. You see the body is the man, the face is that of the animal, the lion. Then the Vamana, that is the dwarf. Then come to the bottom left-hand side, the Rama, or the ideal human. Then the Balaram, that is the pastoral. Then the Krishna, that is the ethical politician. Then the Parasuram, and finally the Kalki, the destroyer of the world. You will find that this incarnation, the philosophy or the theory of incarnation of Vishnu, preempts Darwin's theory of almost as a Darwin's philosophy of evolution, the evolution of life forms from the sea to the land, from the fish to the mammal. Now, if you look at the animals in everyday life, you'll find that animals in Indian culture were revered in everyday life for religio-cultural reasons, as I explained. Thus, the elephant species was recognized as the remover of obstacles, his role in the Indian jungle. Because of his role in the Indian jungle, the langur was a fellow primate, that is the monkey is a fellow primate. The tiger was the most feared. The fish was an ecological indicator. The presence or the absence of fish in the water bodies gives you an idea about the ecosystem of that place. The bow was an indicator of rain and plowed the soil, helping the farmer. The cow was essential for sustenance. The bull was a draught animal. That is the concept of the pastoralism, both the cow and the bull. The black buck was essential for the survival of the khejri plant. That is very crucial for the sustenance in the desert part of India. The elephant-headed Ganesha and the simian Hanuman, that is the animal incarnation of Vishnu, Vagdev the tiger, and the black buck were thus considered as divine because they have been given religious associations. So the animal ethics attitude, our attitude towards animals is deeply governed by such religious associations. The qualities of the animals were assumed by the associated deities, and an elaborated mythology was built around it in order to propagate such values within the common masses, both written as well as oral. This is the picture of the Ganesha. You'll find the body is that of a human and the face is that of an elephant. And by looking at this picture, you can realize why elephant is so revered in India, because it is associated with this god Ganesha. This is a picture of the Hanuman. This is basically the monkey god. Okay, so another god that is revered in India, particularly the northern part of India. So apart from this, many animals were regarded as totemic figures who acquired lower positions as they were absorbed into the Hindu pantheon. Many Sanskrit Gotra, that is the lineage of the Hindus, the names and names of sages are of animal origin, such as the Gotra, that is the lineage of Bharadwaj, is related to the owl, Garga is related to the crocodile, Rayasingha was born of a doe, Jambuka was a jackal, and Gautama was rabbit or a plant origin, like Kaushika, Kushgrass, and even water, such as Agastya. Now, the sanctity of an animal in Indian culture, which informs their attitude towards animals or builds the animal ethics, is not only for its religious reasons but also for its economic value. Thus, cattle are respected, particularly the cow, by pastoral society that rely on the animal for their sustenance. The pastoral Vedic Aryans considered cattle as a major source of wealth, and therefore they have been given a sacred status. Be it cattle, be it the snake, be it the tiger, be it the monkey, be it the elephant, everything has either the religious association or an economic association. Now, some animals were part of social history and ended up as demons. So the Mahisha or the buffalo was the ruler of ancient Mysore, who was defeated by goddess Durga. The buffalo was worshipped by the indigenous pastoral tribes of India, the indigenous part. And the war between the buffalo demon and the goddess replicates the conflict between buffalo revering tribes and the food producers who worship Mother Goddess. So this is basically a conflict between the indigenous and the other. When the latter won the war, the former became a demon, but Mahisha lives on as a buffalo god of the indigenous tribes such as Todas, the Maurya, the Gonds, and as the deity of Masoba in the state of Maharashtra. Just like humans, animals too can rise above the limitations of their body and live a life complying with one of those three margas. That is that of Gyan, that or knowledge, karma or action, and bhakti or devotion. As I explained earlier, there is no difference. There is no human, non-human binary in Indian religion. There is no human-animal binary in Indian religion. All are the same. Now, the principles of Hinduism, Jainism, as well as Buddhism has been translated in the form of fables or stories, and two most important such collections are the Panchatantra and the Jataka tales. Now, the Panchatantra is a collection of stories written by Pandit Vishnu Sharma in the 4th century BC. The stories are basically fables based on animal characters, and it always ended with a moral. Now, although scholars regard the fable with a restraint and skepticism, associating the respective text with a potential anthropocentrism concerning the depiction of animals, plants, and things, They're crucial for understanding and evaluating literary animals in general. So by looking at Panchatantra, our fable, we can have a fair idea in evaluating how literature represents values towards the animals. So Panchatantra gives us a very good example of how animal ethics are represented in literature, Indian literature. That fables are texts that often relate animal stories about incidents in order to illustrate human morals belongs to the central theoretical assumptions about them in literary theory. How humans treat animals, or how animals should be treated in general. Panchatantra gives a very unique idea. Panchatantra can help describe about animals or environments and the way humans deal with them literally and in literature. So it gives an idea about how animals are represented both in literary imagination as well as in practical life. Fable or Panchatantra, both as a literary genre and a fiction or literature in general, is a prime example of zoopoetics and ecopoetics, because the fable or the Panchatantra problematizes and theorizes the relation of texts, animals, and environments. Take any stories of Panchatantra, be it the crow, the story of the crow, be the story of the jackal, or the story of the lion. It depicts how animals are represented in everyday cultural, socio-cultural life in India. What is the perception or the common consensus about animals, about the common general human animal ethics in the society. And Panchatantra gives a very fair idea about that. Panchatantra problematizes the becoming that is the anthropocentrism in the anthropos itself. Panchatantra, rather than developing a fable theory, uses fable as a method in order to narrate a change in the relation of humans, animals, and their ecologies. Panchatantra presents two worlds, one mirroring the other. The two worlds, that is the humans and that of the animals. And both the worlds are in dialogue with each other or comment on each other. Again, the Jataka tales hold up noble qualities of various animals as examples to be emulated. Now, the Jataka tales are related to, or not only just related, it's an integral part of Buddhism. Many of the earlier births of the Buddha were believed to have been as animals, while his final birth as Gautam Buddha was prophesied in his mother Maya Devi's dream of an elephant entering her womb. So in every sphere, in everyday socio-cultural interactions or experiences, we find how religion, not only just in a codified form, but as in a everyday cultural practice, religion is integrally related to the animal ethics or animal values that humans share in India. Now, talking animals and birds have been present in Indian literature from earliest times. In many ancient cultures, non-human forms of life, birds, animals, and even trees were believed to have suprahuman abilities and powers, to possess a special kind of wisdom, and to bear a special relationship to the sacred. Further, Indian thought and belief does not make a stark distinction, that I have been hinting again and again. It does not make a stark distinction between the humans and the non-human order of being. all are part of the whole, all possess the spark of divinity that is in man, and both Panchatantra and Jataka tales depict such wholeness through their animal and human representation. And it is this equality of representation, it is the equality of animals with humans, or for that matter of fact, any other creature of the universe or the world, that creates the fundamental value system, the animal ethics of the Indians. In India, many of you perhaps know that they do a namaskar. And it means that they consider everybody, be it animate or inanimate, as having a soul and deserve a respect, because they treat everything, be it animate, inanimate, be it humans, be it animals, be it humans, be it non-humans, as equal to each other, neither higher nor lower, unlike the great chain of beings, where humans is thought of as residing at the peak of the hierarchy, as the supreme of the, or the highest of the evolved forms. In Indian tradition, everybody is equal. The animals are equal to humans and all the creatures of this world. And such a belief system informs the animal ethics in Indian culture. This value of equality, along with the value of non-violence towards all life forms, that is quintessential to the animal ethics in India. So that is this much I had to say, and I'm open to questions now.
Ok, Roy, thank you. Luana, você gostaria de passar as perguntas que vieram para Roy?
Então, professor, as perguntas que eu vi estão nos comentários no YouTube, eu coloquei aqui no chat do Meet.
É isso que eu estou vendo.
Para a pessoa visualizar. Teacher, have some questions in the chat, please, and have other many commentaries in the chat in YouTube.
Okay, after this question, I will ask mine, okay? So let the questions come. Can you read, Roy, the question that Aurino Jr. has sent you?
No, I can't see any.
So why don't you read? It's on the chat. Luana?
Yes, can you please, anyone, just read out the question? It would be easier for me to,
Luana, shall I read or you're going to read?
I prefer you read, teacher.
Okay. Please, doctor, could the allegorical relationship with the myth of the battle involving the human flesh eater, Rakasha, that he considers like the representation of the coronavirus, with the help of Hanuman, boost the acceptance and vaccination of those who deny the best defenses against SARS-CoV-2?
Yes, Zelia, can you please rephrase the question? I couldn't understand.
Okay, I didn't understand exactly what he wants to say either. I'm just reading what he wrote. I asked him before to clarify.
Okay.
He wants to know if the allegorical relationship between the battle, okay, of Rakasa with Hanuman, boosts, B-O-O-S-T-S, the acceptance and the vaccination of those who deny best defense against SARS-CoV. Because he put in brackets that the vaccinations come from the simians. So because Hanuman is the representation of a monkey, maybe. So he wants to know that this is a kind of allegorical, or I can understand like a prophecy beforehand, you know, about because Hanuman fights a struggle against something evil. If it is an allegorical representation or relationship that can bringing it today, it can reflect the things that are going on now.
It depends. It depends. I don't think it's an allegorical representation, but the most important, you know, one of the most important thing about religious texts is any of the religious texts, for that, not just Hinduism, is that these religious texts are so universal that you can interpret it any way you like. You know, that is the beauty of these texts. So, but I don't think it's a very, it has any allegorical references. Though in the common culture, though in the popular culture, it could be used in a very allegorical sense, because there has been instances in India where, you know, very many politicians have been trying to, boost up people to fight against the coronavirus, because when such a pandemic hits the entire world, people get scared. So one of the ways is that politicians try to boost them up, okay, by referring to their mythologies, the mythological stories, the way, you know, we have fought against these things and we will win and on these things. So in that sense, it can be used as an allegorical, but
yes.
Yes, Silvia.
He has rephrased his question. He wants to know if religion plus spirituality can help science to vaccinate people who deny the beneficial effects of the vaccines.
Obviously, it can be done. If applied properly, it can be done. I am just telling you a very good example. For example, it's not the vaccine. In southern part of India, the southern part of India for a long time, you know, a particular area have been suffering from severe deforestation, you know, severe deforestation. And because of which the ecology of that region have been suffering very much. Now, what the priests, you know, the Hindu priests came up with a solution. And the solution is that when anybody visits a temple, it's almost a ritual that they are given a prasad, you know, something to eat, you know, that is basically believed to be the offering of God. After you do the worship, you give the God some food, which is literally distributed among the people, and that is called as the prasad, and it is believed to be the offerings of God, something very, you know, good thing. Now, what these priests came with a solution for this deforestation is that instead of the prasad, they started giving a small sapling to everybody who visits the temple. And it was mandatory that the person who takes the sapling will take care of the sapling so that it grows into a tree. So what it ensured is that within the next 10 to 15 years, the area was again became full with plants, an area that has been suffering from deforestation. So religion and spiritualism obviously can help you in any situations. Spiritualism is particularly your relationship to God. It doesn't believe in any hierarchy. Religion is more of an hierarchical thing, you know, with people, you know, humans taking the upper hand. So both religion and spiritualism can obviously help in dealing with coronavirus. Obviously, not just the coronavirus, not just the pandemic, but any situation if applied properly. This is what I feel.
Thank you. I have one question. If Luana doesn't have another one, do you have, Luana, another one?
No, I just parabenizations, the teacher. Thank you for the presentation. It was really good to listen you. So thanks.
Okay, so let me ask you 2 more questions. The other question that I'm going to ask you, Roy, I'm going to tell in Portuguese first, so people will have an idea what I'm doing. O meu interesse é o seguinte: essa palestra foi incrivelmente importante para falar sobre o sistema filosófico da Índia, né? Vários sistemas filosóficos das escrituras hindus influenciaram nessa questão de uma visão mais favorável em relação aos animais. Mas a gente sabe que a realidade, o mundo contemporâneo, tem problemas iguais em todos os lugares. Então, a minha pergunta para a Roy é como é que a post-colonial society, não é, lida com as pressões do desenvolvimento e a modernidade, não é? Qual é o papel dos ecologistas e os ativistas ambientais? My question is, how post-colonial society deal with the pressures of development and modernity? What is the role of ecologists and environmental activists in relation to the killing of animals and nature in general?
Okay, the post-colonial perception in India is very, as you can understand, the post-colonial period in India is, as far as animal ethics is concerned, it's a period of conflicts. Because on the one hand, there is the value systems that India has believed in, or the people of India has believed in for long. And on the other, there is the Western value system, a value system that emerged, a value system towards animals that was informed out of the Western Enlightenment, and that thinks of the humans and the animals in almost as a binary, with animals being the superior one. It obviously creates a sense of conflict. So India had almost more than 300 years of colonial, has a colonial legacy. Now, what it has done, that within the mass, within the common mass, in everyday culture, you will find that people still revering and protecting animals at the local level. But at the managerial level, at organized level, since India has basically imbibed all the processes of colonialism, so the colonial footprints regarding conservation of animals, regarding conservation of the ecosystem is very much present there. And this is because you will find most of the environmental laws, most of the environmental organizations in this part of the country is basically something that was formed during the colonial period. And since it was formed during the colonial period, it was imbued with colonial values and ethics. So what it creates in the post-colonial society at present is that a situation of conflicts that I tried to explain at the very beginning. A very good example is the Sundarbans, that is the southern part of West Bengal. The Sundarbans are basically a deltaic region, delta, and the life is very fragile. And humans and the non-humans always live in balance with each other. And the picture that I shared is that of a goddess called Bon Bibi. There are Hindus there, there are Muslims there, but both of them together has evolved a syncretic culture, and they worship a common goddess called the Bon Bibi. And it is believed that it is this goddess of Bon Bibi, through her teachings, through her values, through her philosophies, serve to maintain a balance between the world of the humans as well as the world of the human and non-humans, or the animals. That is the world of the humans and the world of the tigers and the crocodiles, in such a way that the two are not in conflict with each other. Now, such a tradition has been there for long. Now, when the colonialists came, they broke such rules, the value systems. They denuded the forest, started cultivation of rice, and everything they could have done. Now, what is the present situation? The present situation is that of conflict. Though there are the forest laws, though there is the biodiversity laws, but it seems to be failing on the ground simply because of the resource conflict. You have changed the values in the last 400 years, the eco-philosophical values, and you have absorbed values that is something that is alien to you. And now what is it has happened? Both the humans and the animals now share the same resource base, the same ecological base. And it has brought both the humans and the animals are in conflict with each other. So this is the present post-colonial situation right now. The situation is that of conflict. Though there are ample instances of conservation or preservation, the government is trying its best to preserve things, to preserve the biodiversity. But the problem is at the level of ethics and values that has suffered a lot during the colonial period. And until and unless people are brought together or people are made a participant in the process of conservation, in the process of sustainability, any conservation work, any sustainability work can't function. Before the colonialists came, it was the trend that the biodiversity, be it the animals, be it the plant kingdom, was taken care of by the locals. But now it is under, since the colonial period, it's under the central agencies. And Indian or the locals are literally alien to the landscape. Rules that are framed by the colonials because they wanted to, just denude the forest and extract timber out of that and, just take the timber to the metropolis center. So this is the post-colonial reality, a reality of conflict and struggle between animals and humans. But still there are pockets of syncretism, of equality, of equalness, that are the rays of hope in this world of the Anthropocene.
All right. Thank you so much. Let me translate very quickly what you have said for people grasp, those who could not grasp the meaning of the question, the answer. Gente, ele falou o seguinte, que 300 anos no regime colonial, obviamente, deixou marcas na sociedade contemporânea. E o exemplo que ele dá é uma região chamada Sunderbans, perto do oeste da Bengal, e que é uma área de preservação. Só que esse atual momento é cercado por um grande conflito, porque, obviamente, as sociedades se expandem e isso traz problemas e tensão para a vida vegetal e a vida animal, especialmente tigres e crocodilos. Então, na medida do possível, as populações locais que tomavam conta desses animais e viviam mais ou menos numa certa harmonia, também sofrem essa tensão. Então, esse conflito, eu acredito que é não só nessa parte, mas em outras partes também, por conta do problema da modernização, por conta dos valores da colonização, e esse é o grande problema. Então, mas, de qualquer forma, na minha própria opinião, há no sistema intelectual, nos textos clássicos filosóficos indianos, há um precedente que a filosofia ocidental nunca teve. I'm telling that in Indian scriptures, there are some precedent ideas that the West never had. And although we have problems in India with ecological system and everything, it's a little bit more favorable than in the West. This is what I'm telling about, in spite of the conflicts.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And the other one is very quickly, for us to finish, I would like to know how native cultures influence the written classic system. Como as culturas nativas da Índia influenciaram os textos clássicos escritos sobre a natureza. Written texts about, like Rig Vedas and Upanishads about nature and human relationship. The indigenous cultures, how was the influence?
It has a tremendous influence, Zelia, because your entire value system, your entire ethics regarding animals, is shaped by your scriptures. Okay, you may not be a very ardent, a very rigid religious person, but these texts are popular both as religious texts as well as the cultural texts. Okay, and many of the scriptures, the value system, be it the Rig Ved, any of the Veds, because the Veds have 4 books, be it Ramayana, be it the Mahabharata, be it the Upanishads. Okay, now these things, the teachings primarily, have been translated from one generation to another through the oral traditions. Okay, because the grandmother teaches the mother teaches her daughter, you know, primarily through the women's of the society.
Wonderful.
Okay, so it has a, yeah, it is a wonderful, you know, a very good example I tell you of the syncretism. In Hindu, in the Upanishads, there is a concept called the Ardha Narishwar. Ardha means half, and Narishwar means half. There is a character, the gods, who is half male and half female, and this is, this contradicts the basic Western ecofeminist philosophy that thinks of ecology being exploited the same way as a man exploits women. But if you come to the Indian culture, you find the concept of Ardhanarishwar, you know, the concept of equality, gender-wise, sex-wise, everything. So you find the indigenous ideas informing your everyday rituals. You know, we do a namaskar. Okay, whenever we do meet a place, the Indians do a namaskar. And what does the namaskar mean? The namaskar basically means that the human or the Indians consider everybody in this art, be it animate, be it inanimate, as having a soul of its own, as having a life of its own. And all life are equally value of a higher order. There is no higher, no lower. It doesn't belong to the great chain of beings. It's not that the humans are the most supreme of creations and the animals are below that. It's not like that. Or everybody is equal. And that's why you do a namaskar, to accept the fact that you are equal to me, and this is how I would greet you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor. Luana, if there is not another question, I think that we may end here. So because you're going to have a section in the afternoon. So if anybody has any question, I think it's time to finish this section. And we are very delighted, Professor, with your participation. Thank you. Gente, eu creio que se vocês não têm mais nada a perguntar, a gente termina por aqui por causa da sessão da tarde, ok?
Ok.
All right, thank you, Roy.
Thank you so much, all of you.
See you in the afternoon.